On today's show, is LeBron James sending cryptic messages again? We'll talk about that, plus a quick Eastern Conference power rankings almost a week into free agency. That's all straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everybody, my name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed and tell a friend to subscribe as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Are the cryptic messages back with LeBron James? Obviously, we have lived through this in Cleveland. We know what this is like. We have been there. We have done that before. We know what a LeBron James courtship looks like. We know what LeBron James passive aggressive messages and statements look like and sound like and feel like. And of course, on Wednesday, social media took off because what was LeBron James doing? LeBron James was golfing at Portage Country Club, which is in Akron, Ohio. It is relatively close to some of the LeBron James Family Foundation properties that are in Akron, notably House 330, the I Promise School. It is in that area. And I got a text Wednesday morning because I have a relative, of course, who is a member at Portage Country Club. It is a country club that I play golf at a couple times a month. I'm very familiar with the area. I'm very familiar with the golf course. And I was actually on Wednesday morning, I was invited to play with my brother-in-law at 8:20 in the morning. And I had some stuff going on, so I couldn't make it. I had to pass on the invitation to golf. And if you know me at all, and I know that maybe the Locked On Cavs audience doesn't quite know this, but I am a huge golfer. I golf very, very frequently. So having to pass on the tee time at Portage Country Club, of course, maybe not my favorite answer to a question that I had to give at a certain point this week. So I was handling some other business on Wednesday morning, and I get a text from my brother-in-law, who's a member there, said, "You're not going to believe this. LeBron James is on the first tee right now." This is about 20 minutes before his tee time. LeBron James is golfing at Portage right now. And then about an hour later, it started to get out onto social media that LeBron was out there. And of course, he posted a couple of things on his Instagram story, a boomerang of the range, a boomerang of him in the golf cart, all dressed in, as you would imagine, Nike golf gear with a hat that said, "Welcome home," because of course it said "Welcome home." Akron for LeBron is home and will always be home. Why did he wear that hat? I don't know. Maybe it's just the one that went with the outfit, or maybe LeBron James knows what he's doing. I do understand how this can be looked at as some cryptic messaging here. And I think the more and more we hear about LeBron's situation in Los Angeles, and of course, as we see this, it is impossible to see stuff like this and to listen to other podcasts that are either Lakers centric, like over at Locked On Lakers, or some national shows where LeBron James right now is, of course, a very big talking point, because despite the fact that he is in his 40s and will be entering, I believe, his 24th season in the NBA somehow next year, despite all that, he is still a big talking point because he is still one of the best players in basketball. So this conversation is worth the oxygen. And anytime these conversations are had, the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course, are a team that is brought up because LeBron has the history in Cleveland. LeBron, his agent, Rich Paul, in the statement that he gave to ESPN after James opted into his contract really did reference the desire to win another championship, to be on a championship contending team. And one, I don't think the Lakers, who have had a very bad start to free agency, I don't think the Lakers are that. I don't think LeBron views the Lakers as that. I really don't think the NBA views the Lakers as championship contenders right now. I think they are a playoff team out west, but I don't look at them and say, yeah, they are a serious threat to win the title. So that is one dot. And we're going to play connect the dots here too. Obviously, there is the history between LeBron, Northeast Ohio, the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is never going to go away. That is one of the primary reasons why this is something we're talking about right now. Had LeBron never played for the Cavs, had he not been drafted here, had he not come back here even after spending 4 years in Miami, we probably would be talking about something along the lines of what lineups the Cavs can use with Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance, because that is certainly something that I am fascinated in and cannot wait to dive into that at a later date. But because of the history that we have here, this is the conversation we're having, and it's a conversation worth having. So it does sound to me, from everything that you listen to, from reading the statements over and over again, it sounds to me as if LeBron really doesn't want to be in Los Angeles. And I can't necessarily say that I blame him. It sounds to me like he would like to, and of course, he has a no trade clause in his contract. It sounds to me as if he would like to be in a different situation. Now, he does make $52.6 million, as I covered on the show the other day, making it very difficult, not just for the Cavs, but for any team to put together a trade package that not just the Lakers would say yes to, but that works within the constraints of the collective bargaining agreement and the NBA's rules. That is a challenge because of how much money LeBron makes. And this isn't to say LeBron James is not worth that amount of money. He is worth that amount of money, but you have to do a lot. And there are not very many players that make as much or more money than LeBron that you could just say, hey, we'll trade you player X for LeBron James. That's not really a thing very many teams can do. The Cavs right now, and they would not do this, but if they wanted to, and they called the Los Angeles Lakers and said, we will trade you Evan Mobley for LeBron James straight up. One, that would be a bad trade for the Cavs. But two, that's not a trade they could do because Evan Mobley does not make the same amount of money that LeBron James does. He makes about $6 million less this upcoming season. So that is not a move the Cavs are allowed to make. And that is where I think things get really complicated here, because I do wonder if what the last week for LeBron James has been is trying to angle to get a buyout from the Los Angeles Lakers, in which case then he could select, obviously, his next destination. I don't know if he wants to be in Cleveland. I have no idea about that. I do know if LeBron James is available and willing to come to Cleveland on a veteran's minimum after getting a $52.6 million buyout this year, that is something that the Cavs should be all about. That is something that I could not draw up more perfect than that situation. But I don't think it is as simple as that. I would be very surprised. And of course, in the NBA, you can never say never. And I think we have all learned that throughout our time watching this league. Things change fast. And things not only change fast, they change a lot. But I don't think LeBron's going to get bought out. I ultimately don't think he's going to be traded. I think that there is a chance we are having this conversation, not this exact conversation, but a conversation similar to it next year when LeBron James reaches free agency. That is something that I do wonder, okay, could we be talking about LeBron James joining the Cavs, not this summer, but next summer? That I do think is a possibility. And I think that is a possibility because, one, he will be a free agent. He will be able to go wherever he wants. If the winning thing is a real thing, which I have no reason to believe that an all-time competitor doesn't want to win championships, the Eastern Conference is, I think, vastly inferior to the Western Conference, and I really don't see an argument otherwise. All of those stars, to me, look like they align. I wouldn't bet on this happening. Like, I don't know that that's the most likely outcome, but I don't think it's something you can rule out. Now, with that said, I do think that we are at the point now where the Cavs trading for LeBron isn't something that makes sense. I don't think that even if LeBron says, I'm going to play for 2 more years and I'm going to spend those 2 years with whatever team trades for me. And of course, he has some control over this situation because he has a no trade clause. But even if that's the case, I have come around to the point where I don't think the Cavs should trade for LeBron. And I'll tell you why next, right here. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Or do you ever wish, I wish I had more money? Well, yes, of course, we all do. But also that managing your money was easier than what it's been for you. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO. One of those would be really nice, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money, they're not just a budgeting app. They're so much more than just a budgeting app. They are a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, spending right in one place. In addition to managing your money, you're building your wealth, which I would argue personally might actually be a little bit more important than managing the money, is building the wealth. That is one of the things that you certainly want to do. Being able to manage all of your money too from various different accounts in one app and have it a streamlined service really is a game changer. That is something that takes some of the stress out of it. It makes it easy. It makes it convenient. It just makes managing your money a much simpler part of your day, your week, your month, however often you need to handle your business there. Monarch Money makes it a much easier experience. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that is monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And I said before the break that I would not trade for LeBron James if I'm the Cavs. And I feel that way not because LeBron's not great, because LeBron is great. But I don't know that 1 year potentially, and you don't know what you're going to get out of LeBron. It's not that he hasn't been great, because what he has done has been unprecedented. He is going to, if he stays healthy this year, he is going to become the NBA's all-time leader in games played. And when you add in how many playoff games he's played, what he has accomplished, I personally am of the belief that there's been no one greater in the league's history. I think that he has put together the greatest career in NBA history. So it's not even about that. But you don't know what you're going to get this upcoming season. You don't know what you're going to get the year after that. And I do think LeBron has more left in the tank. I don't think he's just going to suddenly fizzle out, but I don't know how much more he has left in the tank. And that is something, if you are thinking about trading for LeBron, I do think teams view as concerning, because it's not as if he is somebody that's going to be a cheap acquisition in the trade market. That is why I don't think, and this is, I believe, according to ESPN, I don't think there is much of a trade market for LeBron James. Now, again, these things, they change. But if I'm the Cavs, you look at what it would take to make a LeBron James trade. They would have to, Darius Garland would be part of that trade. There is very, very little doubt about that. He's making $39 million next year. They would need to include him to get to the money, to get to the $52 million. But wait, there's more. The Cavs can't just trade $52 million to the Lakers and get LeBron James back, because they're in the second apron. And this is very similar to the Kevin Durant situation that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Because the Cavs are in the second apron, they are not allowed to aggregate contracts via trade. So that means that they would have to combine contracts in order to reach the $52 million that LeBron James makes this next season. In order to do that, they must be post-transaction compliant with the apron rules. That means while combining contracts to make LeBron James a member of the Cavs, they would have to trade away roughly $75 million. And that is not an exact figure, but roughly $75 million in order to receive just LeBron James back. Now, all of that money doesn't need to go to the Lakers. They could be creative through that way. But you are then talking about trading Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, some combination of those very important and very good basketball players for a 41-year-old LeBron James this year. That is something that is, I think, a humongous risk to take. And it's not just that it's a risk right now, but I do think it's actually more of a risk down the road because, sure, the Cavs could get a great version of LeBron James, but there is no guarantee that he is going to be able to bring Cleveland another title. And if this move were made, and we are, I do think, in an era of Cavs basketball that's championship or bust for the next couple of seasons. If this move is made and they don't win a title, it's a failure. The same way that I do think you can make the case down the road, and this is not a conversation for right now, but I do think you could make the case if the Cavs don't win a title in the next couple of years, this era came up short. But we will let that play out before we actually talk about that because it's a wildly unfair thing to do right now. But I also think that in making this sort of trade, I think there's life after LeBron that you have to think about. And that's not a pleasant thing to say because LeBron has been, as long as I can remember, almost a part of the NBA, but he's not going to be there forever. He is I would imagine he is pretty close to calling it quits on his career. I don't know how many more years are left, but there's no debate. He's much closer to the end than the start. And if you're building a team and you see what has happened across the NBA with these new rules, the way that particularly the Boston Celtics have had to trade off pieces from their 2024 NBA Finals winning team. They've had to trade Kristaps Porzingis for George Niang, which is a salary dump trade. They had to trade Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons, who they might trade again in order to alleviate more money so they are not nearly as expensive, so they could get out of the second apron and potentially, too, the tax. There's going to come a time, I don't know if it's going to be after this season or after next season. I would bet right now after next season, but we don't know this for sure as of right now. I would bet it'll be after next season. There's going to come a time where the Cavs are going to have to do what Boston is doing this summer, where they're going to have to tear down things. Now, that does not mean that it is the end of the Cavs being competitive. I think there will probably be some sort of gap year in there where they take a step back from being a 55 to 65 win team and become a 45 to 55 win team. Probably 45 to 50 is more accurate, and they make the playoffs, but they're not a true championship contender. And then after that, when they have their 1 year reprieve from being very expensive, they'll be able to build back up around Evan Mobley. And the key to doing that is if you look up and down this Cavs roster, if you look at the contracts that guys have, how many of them are going to finish their current contracts or impending extensions? In the case of Jarrett Allen, who will not be on his extension until next year. But how many of those guys are going to finish their contracts in Cleveland? Evan Mobley, I think, is a lock to. I think Donovan Mitchell is a lock to, because I would bet as of right now that he signs another contract with the Cavs next summer. Other than those two, and of course, I'm not talking about guys on expiring deals. Like Lonzo Ball this year theoretically could be an expiring contract. Dean Wade on an expiring deal. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking more so about the guys that have multiple years left on their contracts. Does Darius Garland finish his current contract in Cleveland? I don't know. I don't feel all that confident that he does. Does Jarrett Allen finish his current contract in Cleveland? I would bet that he does not. I would be very, very surprised if he is in Cleveland for 4 more seasons. The Cavs at some point are going to have to trade those guys in order to try and get out of the second apron and to try and get out of the tax. So if they make that trade for LeBron James, they're not going to be able to trade those guys for assets. The asset that they would be getting is LeBron James. because I do think as we look at Evan Mobley and what his present looks like and what his future looks like, obviously he is a very focal point of a very competitive era of Cavs basketball that could bring a championship to Cleveland. And the way that I see it is there's going to be another era of Cavs basketball surrounded by Evan Mobley that maybe doesn't have anybody that's currently on the roster. But they will be able to, if they do this right, they will be able to turn a team centered around Evan Mobley 5, 6, 7 years from now into a championship contender again when Evan Mobley is in his prime, when he is in his late 20s, early 30s, and playing at that point probably the best basketball of his life, should he stay healthy the entire time and pan out the way that we all expect him to pan out. If that happens, the Cavs are going to be reinvented. And the way that they can reinvent themselves there is by making good trades when they have to tear things down to get out of the second apron. If they make a trade for LeBron James, that goes away. That then goes away. Then they are looking in the post-LeBron era of needing to trade Evan Mobley, of needing to totally start over from scratch. And maybe that is the direction that they would want to go. I don't think so. But ultimately, I do think that making a trade for LeBron is so much more complicated than just saying, well, he helps us right now, this year. I think it's very short-sighted. And of course, the Cavs have a chance to win a title this year. And I think they need to do everything within reason to maximize this upcoming season. I'm just not sure that that sort of trade for somebody entering their 41-year-old season is something that is actually in reason for the Cavs. I think it's too costly. I think it's something that is too risky. And there's no guarantee that LeBron James at 41 is going to be as good as he was as a 40-year-old. Or LeBron James at 42 is going to be as good as he was as a 40-year-old. There's no promises there. And I think that makes this a very, very complicated endeavor. And ultimately, one that I wouldn't do if I were Kobe Altman. If LeBron James secures a buyout from the Lakers, which I don't expect to happen, but if he does that and becomes a free agent and wants to come back to Cleveland, play on the minimum and ring chase in Northeast Ohio where he's from, sign me up. Can't picture a better situation. But if it means parting with not only a good chunk of the present, but sabotaging the future, I don't think that's the right move for the Cavs. I really, truly don't. Well, I do think the Cavs, despite the fact that there are some people upset with the offseason, I think they've had a solid one. Where does it stack up in the East? Where are they right now in the Eastern Conference? We are going to do power rankings. Yes, power rankings in the Eastern Conference on July 3rd. That's straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. I don't agree with the notion that the Cavs have gotten worse so far this offseason. I don't know that they've gotten better, but I also struggle to say that they've gotten worse either, because I do think that on paper, and games are not played on paper, they're played on hardwood. On paper, I think the Cavs maybe are a little bit more talented with the additions of Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance Jr. I like both of those additions. I will be spending time next week talking about some lineups that the Cavs can throw out. Tomorrow's show going to be talking about Tyrese Proctor. Had JJ Jackson from Locked On Blue Devils, does a great job covering Duke for us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to talk about him tomorrow, unless the Cavs do something today, in which case tomorrow's episode will be about that. But if nothing happens for the Cavs on Thursday, Friday's episode is going to be one that centers on Tyrese Proctor and how he can help out the Cavs right now. But in looking up and down the East, I think teams have sensed an opportunity. And I get it, because the Indiana Pacers, while I don't think they were some budding dynasty, and my goodness, have they had a bad week. I don't think they were some budding dynasty, but they were a team that people saw and say, okay, that team has figured out a postseason formula. They've been in the conference finals. They've been in the NBA finals. They know how to win when it counts. But the Boston Celtics were, as I mentioned, always going to take a step back, and are taking a bigger step back without Jason Tatum. So teams are going for it. The New York Knicks have had a fine offseason. They finally hired a coach, old friend Mike Brown, back in the head coaching game. The Orlando Magic, I think, have done some nice things. The Atlanta Hawks, I think, have done some very nice things. But I keep coming back to a couple of things. I still think, and again, games are not played on paper, but I think on paper, the Cavs are the best team. I don't think that they are a team that anybody else in the East is fearful of. But right now, I believe they are the best team in the Eastern Conference. I believe that while they might not have the best player in the Eastern Conference, I'm not sure how many teams have a better duo in the Eastern Conference than Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. Maybe you could make a case in New York for Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. I would take Mobley over Towns, certainly. And I think that tips the scale. If you want to say that Brunson and Mitchell are equals, which I would lean Donovan Mitchell there as well. But if you wanted to say those two are equals, I think Evan Mobley being a more complete two-way basketball player puts the Cavs over the edge there. I don't think there's another duo as good as those two. And I think that matters a lot in this conversation. So I do think right now, if you were to power rank teams in the Eastern Conference, I think the Cavs right now, and the betting odds reflect this, is right now on FanDuel, as I am recording this at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night. The Cavs are favorites to win the Eastern Conference. The New York Knicks are very close behind them, but the Cavs are the favorites. And I think that that will be ultimately, we will see these odds move around a little bit as we get closer to the season. But I would anticipate that when the season begins, the Cavs are the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. And I do think, too, when you talk about a team from a big market like New York, like Los Angeles, those odds tend to get a little bit inflated. Like, for instance, I just did a whole thing about how the Lakers are not title contenders. They have the fourth best odds to win the West, better than the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been in the Western Conference Finals the past 2 years. So I don't think that that necessarily is always equal. I think there's a little bit of juice packed in with the New York Knicks. That said, I would have New York second. I think they've earned that. I think hiring Mike Brown in place of Tom Thibodeau is sort of just the Spider-Man meme. I'm not sure that he's that much different than Tibbs as a head coach. I don't know what that's going to do for him. He will play more guys than Tibbs did, but ultimately, I don't know that he's the postseason coach that the New York Knicks were looking for. And I look at what Orlando has done. I like Tyus Jones. I don't know that he's everything they need in a point guard. I think that team's going to be very good defensively. Still don't think they have enough shooting. I would have them third. I would have the Atlanta Hawks fourth. I really, really do like Nickeil Alexander-Walker as an addition there. Jalen Johnson can stay healthy. I think he's going to be a beast. But I ultimately keep coming back to, I don't think a team that has Trae Young as its best player, which Atlanta still is built around Trae Young. They've got some really nice pieces around him, but they're still built around Trae Young. I don't think a team that has Trae Young as its best player is one that I take seriously as a championship contender. And I know that there has been the conversation floating around that Kevin Durant and LeBron James had, which is more noise and maybe cryptic messaging on LeBron's part. I know that conversation's been floating around about smaller guards being able to win with them. I think that discussion is very different when you're talking about said player as your third best player, the way Darius Garland is on the Cavs, versus your best player, the way that Trae Young is at least thought of still in Atlanta. I think that is a very, very different conversation. Now, maybe by the end of the year, Jalen Johnson is their best player, and I think that would be the best thing that could possibly happen for the Atlanta Hawks. After that, I go Philadelphia. I don't have hope for them. I don't think they're that good, but if Joel Embiid is somehow healthy and able to play, he is maybe not the best player in the East, but he could be the second best player in the East. Then Detroit, who has not had a great offseason. Milwaukee, who I am just befuddled by what they have done. I mean, if you really want to look at a team that is desperate and I think has absolutely tanked their future, look no further than the Milwaukee Bucks. However, they did take Miles Turner away from the Pacers, which I think helps everybody above them on this list, not up this upcoming season because of no Tyrese Halliburton, but I do think that will have some long-term ramifications that don't necessarily help Milwaukee, but could help the rest of these, because I just don't know what the Pacers are going to do to build back up around Tyrese Halliburton when he ultimately does return from the Achilles injury that will cost him next season. So the Cavs right now, I do think have had a good offseason. I don't think it has been a great offseason. I know there are a lot of thoughts out there about Ty Jerome. I think the plan for the Cavs has been very clear, that they want to build a team that is filled with two-way guys. They have done that. And I do think that as of right now, as of 10 o'clock on Wednesday, June 2nd, the Cavs are the best team in the East. Now, they need to go out there and be the best team in the East. at 10 o'clock on whatever day of the week June 2nd is next year, as opposed to July 2nd of this year. But I do think right now they're on the right track. We just have to actually see it in action. As I said, tomorrow's show, going to focus on Tyrese Proctor, the number 49 overall draft pick. The Cavs took their first draft pick, who they did sign to a contract earlier this week. One other bit of news, Luke Travers did sign another two-way deal with the Cavs, so he will be back in Cleveland officially. And as we talked about earlier in the week, Amani Bates is an unrestricted free agent. Do not believe he will be back in Cleveland anymore. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today. And every day you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cavs.